Hello and welcome. I've been hearing a lot recently about building things in public. The idea being that if we're going to develop some kind of project or service for somebody to use, we should just build the whole thing in public and let people decide if they like it or not. People tend to kind of shy away from this strategy because they're worried about people stealing their ideas. And in this case, I'm not worried about that at all. The idea that I plan on building already exists. I just think we could do really cool things. I can learn something and you can learn something while we build. So, for a little knowledge about me, my name's AJ. I work in software engineering and personal finance, and I really want to build a specific application I've been wanting to build for a long time. My intent is to build it alongside you. So, every week I'm going to release an article and a video explaining the next steps of how I'm building this project. And if you like to, if it's interesting to you, you can follow along and build it with me. This particular project I want to build is an end to end encryption messaging application. The idea being that the two people messaging together are talking just to each other and no one in between is capable of seeing or reading those messages. I want to build it in a very unique way, but I kind of want to describe to you what it is that we're doing today and why I'm taking the approach that I'm taking so that you could see why we might be interested in building something to this effect. Now, standard messaging apps don't use an end to end encryption method. What they do is, as you're typing the message and you hit send, that message gets encrypted and it gets sent along to the server of the provider that you're using for this messaging system. It could be your native text messaging app, could be like Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, anything like that. And it encrypts the data as it's getting sent to the server. However, the server then decrypts the data, takes the data, does what it wants with it to make sure that it's working properly, stores it inside of their database, and oftentimes databases are also encrypted and secure, and then it pulls that information back out, decrypts it, sends it, re-encrypts it now for the third time, and sends it off to the receiving user. The reason it does all of these steps is that any information that's transferred from your device to a server is automatically encrypted, but it's just encrypted between the two of you as there's like a handshake made between these two devices. That encryption follows along with your authentication. So if you show up to a server for the first time, the server doesn't know who you are, but it definitely knows you're there. And it knows this computer exists and it's talking to me, or this iPhone exists and it's talking to me. Then once you're authenticating, once you're logging in, you're saying this device also applies to the logged in user that just spent the time putting their information in. Now the server knows the difference, or now the server knows that that device is attached to that particular person. And anything that's sent from your device to the server or back is encrypted automatically. The dilemma with systems like this is that once it gets to the server, we have to trust that they're handling the information appropriately. If you remember the Snapchat debacle where some Snapchat employees were reading customer data, kind of spying on people that they knew, spying on people they didn't know, and the idea of someone looking into your messages, especially very specific ones, and I'm not advocating for anything illegal, I just mean like maybe between you and your spouse, or maybe you're sending pictures of your young children and you don't like to put your kids on the internet for everyone to see, or maybe you're conducting business about that project that you refuse to build in the open. See what I did there? You take all that and you realize that the people at Snapchat could read it. Well, it turns out that we're trusting all these companies that they're not reading our information, and some of them maybe, some of them probably aren't, but we would never actually know. So I intend to build this application just for the sheer fact of adding the privacy and the security bits. So how does end-to-end encryption work? End-to-end encryption works by the first person encrypting the information before it even leaves the device. That process of encrypting on the way to the server still exists, but we don't care about it anymore because that data is now encrypted. It gets sent to the server. The server cannot decrypt it because it was encrypted on that original device. And that information now goes to the last person who then decrypts it because they also have the same key. And because the server doesn't have that key, the server can't actually see what's inside of that message, creating an end-to-end encryption protocol. The dilemma with this is we have to find a way to get the keys to both people. So this is why you don't see this very often, is that this process is not usually very user intuitive. It's not very friendly to people because you have to set things up properly in order for this to work properly. And that process takes some kind of know-how. It's not just apparent right out of the box. So I created a list of things that our application needs. If you want to look at this list in more detail, I've published it on my website, ajchef.com. It's the most recent article, I guess, if you're watching this video recently. But I'm going to put it on the screen here and we can all look at it together. All right, requirements list. This is the first step in order to make sure that we're programming the thing that we intend to go out and program. A lot of times it's easy to have like a vague idea of what you want in your head, but when you start writing things down as to like the specific details of what people may or may not be able to do, that's when you run into the dilemma of accidentally coding something you never intended to. And it also makes design very hard. And design is the next step after this step where we kind of dictate everything that we need to know. So the first thing we need to look at is login and sign up. So this is interesting. I want to make sure that we keep this as simple as possible. I don't want to do anything too crazy here. I also don't want to collect too much information from the user because the entire concept of this is to be sort of as anonymous and protected as possible. I don't want the ability as the server owner to be able to track who is doing what and who's saying what. I just want all that gone. So if we ask for too much information, we're kind of putting ourselves into a precarious situation. However, if we don't ask for any information, it becomes impossible to authenticate a user. So we have to have something. My thought process is to use an email. An email, as opposed to a phone number, is easier to create. You could create, easy emails and more anonymous. That way, the person who's using it can decide how anonymous they want to be. If you just want to use your Gmail account and you're okay with that, then that's good to go. And then what I'm figuring is for logging in and signing up, instead of having like a multi-step process where you sign up and a separate process where you log in, my thought is you just add in your email address, you hit go, it sends you a code. And if you have not previously logged into the app, it creates an account for you. And if you have, then it just logs into that account. So it's one flow for everything, and we don't have to think about it. We're going to let the users dictate an alias that they can set to be searched for. So this is how people can connect to each other. And that's as descriptive as we're going to get about the user. Email and alias are all the things we're going to hold on to. We then need the user to be able to start a chat stream. So the idea of a stream or a thread. So the concept, or that's maybe a little too high. The concept being that you have some thread that you're having a discussion in. Could be multiple people, could be just you and one other person, and everything that's getting tossed into this thread is getting an encrypting in a specific way. Because if you have multiple chats going with multiple people, you're going to want a different encryption, or at least a different key, secret key for each one of them. So the idea is to be able to start a stream or a thread that all that information can now go into. The dilemma and where this gets a little bit confusing is that getting into a stream does not mean you can read the contents of the stream. And we'll get into that in a little bit. The next bit that we need is some ability to have pending user requests. So the owner, someone who starts a thread, can connect to people via email or their alias, and then they can add them to this thread or this stream. And they should be able to see some sort of pending request that they can accept or deny. I also think they should be able to come back at some point to accept something that they've denied in the past, assuming that that invitation is still open. So that's something that we'll have to consider. Like if you decline it, maybe it goes into some sort of decline box that you can open in later and review, or something to that effect. And also, if you're on the invited side, if you're inviting someone, you need to be able to rescind invitations. I think something that would be fun for this project, moving on to the next bit here, is a secret key should be a picture. It would be fun and easy and discreet way to share a key. I think it would be cool instead of sending just this giant stream of text that's like, this is the key for the encryption. It would be just a photo. And maybe it's a photo that you can identify with each other really easily so that you don't lose the key, but no one else knows that that is the key, right? So maybe a photo of the two of you together and make it really easy to find that key again in the future. However, it is necessary to share that key at times. But we can't share the key within the application because that would create a security flaw, which is now we're sharing information that can't be encrypted because the other person on the other side can't decrypt it yet. They don't have the key yet, and we're not interested in that. So my thought around this is we could share the key using the share box of like your phone that would then allow you to copy and paste it, send it via text, send it via airdrop, anything like that. So that way it's separate from the application itself. And I think we should also present a message saying, be careful about the information you're sending along with this image. Because if someone was to crack your phone and see the photo next to a message saying, this is the key for XYZ web stream, that obviously would break our encryption policy. So we want to make sure that we tell the user, be very careful about sharing this stuff. They also need to be able to set the key to a stream. Every stream should have its own key. The owner should be able to set or change it at any given time. The user may be like a new person who's joined the stream. They may need to set a new key for that new person, or maybe the new person comes and you need to share it. That was what the previous one was. We need to share it with someone new comes. Or maybe the key gets compromised and we can't use it anymore. In that case, we need a new key. We should also have the ability to add or remove users from a stream. At any point, the user should be able to add or remove people from the stream. This adds a lot of complexity since technically the removed user would still have the key. So that's a security problem. And I don't know of a better way to handle that other than maybe start a new stream instead of this one, or you would change the key, but then all the old messages would become unreadable. So maybe you're okay removing that person, or that person removes themselves, and you don't care if they see it or not. You just don't want them in the stream anymore, or they don't want to be in the stream anymore. I don't know. We'll have to think about that one maybe a little bit more. And then sending data back and forth. So once the stream is set up and the keys are correct, users are all inside there, we should be able to just send messages back and forth. And for starters, we're just going to keep it nice and clean with text. Not going to get too crazy, just nice and clean. And lastly, deleting an account. All users should be able to delete their account. I think there's also some European requirements for stuff like they need to be able to access all their data, but we'll get there when we get there. No reason to go all crazy about that now. And then lastly, my implementation plan. So I'm not an application developer in the sense of like, I don't build iPhone or Android applications. I'm a web developer. I build web applications or websites. And so I can't really sit down and build this thing kind of like in the way that would be traditional, where you download the application from the App Store. But I think I might have an idea that is good and might have some advantages that downloading an application from the App Store doesn't have. And my thought is to build this thing in what's called a progressive web app. A progressive web app is an application where you can download the app, you can download a website to your desktop, and then when you open it, it looks like an app. It doesn't look like a website. It doesn't have the bars at the top. It doesn't have the navigation stuff at the bottom. It looks just like an app. And so my thought is if we do that, it also gives us some power as far as being able to request and send data. It will be able to handle things when it's offline. That's another effective tool. So if you don't have a good internet connection, you're not totally bunk, you could still read through old messages. All those abilities are available through a progressive web app. So we get the ability to kind of simulate an application without it being an application. The other advantage to that is that no install of an application has to occur, which means there's no record of you having purchased something, downloaded an app, installed an app. That's just not recorded. So it's another step now where someone can't come to you and say like, hey, there was these messages transferred back and forth on this device, and we know that you had this app on your phone. All that gets thrown out the window. So even an extra layer of privacy, they won't be able to tell that you even have this on your device. So ultimately, to sum up, my goal is to build this thing in public. I'm going to put the code and the designs available on GitHub if you wanted to follow along. I'm writing articles on ajchef.com if you wanted to follow along, and I'm going to make these videos and post them to this YouTube channel. I suspect that this is going to take us some time, as we're going to do a little bit each week, and we're just going to chug along until we have something that's really cool. And my hope is at the end, whoever's just involved in this process, we can all get together and create a group stream and add a picture as a key, and then start chatting with each other and kind of enjoy the success a little bit. That would be super fun. So thanks for checking this out. I hope that this is going to be a fun, exciting experience, and I look forward to seeing you all next time.